The phone shouldn't have been ringing. Not the burner line. Not during the Colombo negotiation. And definitely not with Denise Daniels's voice on the other end, stripped raw with a terror he'd never heard in 15 years. Please come home now, she'll kill him. Dante Rossi didn't share. Not his territory, not his business, and sure as hell not his son. She didn't say Adriano's name. Didn't need to. He'd already made his decision before the call ended, before his consigliere could finish his sentence about quarterly projections. Whatever was happening in his house just became the only problem that mattered. And Nina. She'd just become his problem to erase. Before we continue this story and see what happens next, please subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring these stories to life. The Rossi estate was supposed to be untouchable. Dante had built that principle into the foundation, literally and figuratively. Reinforced walls. Armed security rotating in 8-hour shifts. Surveillance that could track a mouse crossing the south lawn. And Denise Daniels, the woman who'd been part of the architecture longer than most of his capos. 15 years. That's how long she'd worked for him. That's how long she'd been invisible. The kind of invisible that meant trusted. The kind that meant she knew where bodies were buried, which senators visited on Tuesdays, and that Adriano hated green beans but would eat them if she told him they'd make him strong like Papa. She'd never called him before. Not once. Not during the Russian territory dispute. Not when Adriano broke his arm falling from the oak tree. Not even when the feds raided the East Wing and found nothing but expensive art and her calm, perfect testimony about Mr. Rossi's business consultations. Denise understood the rules. His world didn't touch hers. She kept Adriano safe, kept the house running and stayed silent about everything else. But the call shattered that boundary. He'd been mid-sentence when the burner buzzed, the one only 5 people had access to. Carlo Colombo sat across from him, fingers steepled, negotiating shipping routes through the port of Baltimore like they were discussing wine futures. Dante never answered during negotiations. Signaled weakness. He answered. Mr. Rossi. Her voice cracked on his name. Please. You need to come home right now. His blood went cold. Denise didn't panic. Denise once stitched his shoulder without flinching when he stumbled through the kitchen door at 3 a.m., bleeding from a rival's ambush. This wasn't panic. This was terror. What happened? Not a question. Command. It's she. A sharp breath. A muffled sound he couldn't identify. Nina. She's going to kill him. I tried to stop her but she's Mr. Rossi, please. Adriano needs you. The room tilted. She'll kill him. Not there's a problem. Not come when you can. She used the word kill and his son's name in the same breath, and every instinct he'd honed over 20 years of survival screamed move. We're done. Dante stood, the chair scraping marble. Carlo's eyes narrowed. Negotiations didn't end mid-sentence, not without consequences. Dante didn't care. Luca, handle this. Whatever he wants, give him 20% less. His consigliere blinked. Boss, we haven't. Now. He was out the door before Carlo could protest, phone still pressed to his ear. Denise. Where are you? That fear in Denise's voice. It was the sound of a loyal servant risking everything. If you believe loyalty should always be rewarded, hit that like button and subscribe right now. Your support helps us tell stories where quiet heroes finally get the recognition they deserve. Now let's see what happened next. The kitchen. I locked us in. But she has a key and I don't know how long. A crash in the background. Child's cry. Adriano, stay behind me. I'm 10 minutes away. Do not open that door. Not for her. Not for anyone. His voice dropped cold and final. If she gets through, you have my permission to do whatever it takes. Capisci? Was. Then steady and fierce. Capisci, Mr. Rossi. The line went dead. Dante's driver knew better than to ask questions when his boss erupted from the building at a dead sprint and snarled. The estate. Break every law. The Maserati screamed through Georgetown, blowing red lights, weaving through traffic with a kind of reckless precision that came from practice. Dante's mind raced faster. She'll kill him. Nina, his fiancée. The woman he'd chosen to legitimize the Rossi name, to be the polished, respectable face of his empire. Blonde, educated, impeccable breeding. The kind of woman who looked perfect in photographs with senators and didn't flinch when his business associates visited for dinner. He'd been so goddamn careful vetting her. Background checks that went back 3 generations. Financial records cleaner than a nun's conscience. References from families older than the Republic. She'd passed every test, except the one that mattered. He'd ignored the small things. The way Adriano went quiet when Nina entered a room. How Denise's jaw tightened whenever Nina issued orders. The night he'd found his son sleeping in Denise's quarters instead of his own bed, and Nina's explanation. He's just going through a phase, darling, had felt too smooth. He'd wanted the illusion. Needed it. A beautiful wife, a stable home, the appearance of normalcy for Adriano. He'd been building an empire for his son, and that empire needed a queen who fit the part. So he'd ignored his instincts. Ignored the warnings his men were too smart to voice. Ignored Adriano's silence. She'll kill him. The words looped in his skull, each repetition stripping away another layer of self-deception. What had he missed? What had Denise seen that he'd been too blind, too arrogant to notice? The Maserati fishtailed through the estate gates. Dante was out before it fully stopped. His hand already on the Beretta concealed at his spine. The house looked normal. Lights glowing warm through the windows. The fountain burbling peacefully. No screams. No broken glass. The silence was worse than chaos. He moved through the front entrance like a predator, every sense sharpened. The foyer empty. The sitting room untouched. The hallway leading to the kitchen. Sound. Glass shattering. A woman's voice high and vicious. Open this door, you stupid bitch, or I swear to God. Nina. Dante's blood turned to ice. He rounded the corner and saw her. His beautiful polished fiancée, barefoot and wild-eyed, slamming her fists against the kitchen door. Her silk robe hung open. Her hair, always perfectly styled, tangled around her shoulders. And in her right hand, a syringe filled with something amber-colored caught the hallway light. She didn't hear him approach. Too focused on the door. On whoever was trapped on the other side. Nina. She spun, and for one crystalline second he saw it. The mask slipping. Not shock. Not relief that he was home. Calculation. Cold, vicious calculation as she weighed her options. Then the mask snapped back, and she was crying, trembling, playing the victim. Dante. Oh, thank God, the maid's gone crazy. She attacked me and locked herself in with Adriano, and I don't know what she's planning. He looked at the syringe. Looked at her. Drop it. What? No, this is insulin. I was just... Adriano doesn't have diabetes. His voice could have cut steel. Drop. Now. Her hand tightened on the syringe. Her eyes darted to the door, to him, calculating distances and exits. Ran. The house swallowed him whole. Dante moved through the marble foyer with predatory silence. His hand steady on the Beretta at his spine. Every instinct screamed wrong. The lights were on. The grandfather clock ticked its eternal rhythm. Mozart drifted from hidden speakers. Nina's playlist, the one she claimed made her feel cultured. Everything looked perfect. That's what made it a lie. He'd built his empire reading the spaces between words, the silences that screamed louder than confessions. This silence had teeth. The kind that came before violence, not after. His gaze swept the sitting room. Nina's cashmere throw draped artfully over the leather chair. Her book, some pretentious philosophy text she'd never actually read past page 10, left open on the side table. The fresh flowers she insisted on twice weekly, their petals still crisp. All of it staged. All of it calculated to project the image of a woman who belonged in his world. Then he saw it. A prescription bottle, half hidden beneath the throw's fringed edge. Orange. The kind of thing that should have been in a medicine cabinet, not camouflaged in the sitting room like contraband. Dante picked it up. The label made his blood freeze. Zolpidem. 10 milligrams. Patient. Nina Jones. Take 1 tablet at bedtime as needed. Except the bottle was nearly empty. 30 pills prescribed 3 weeks ago. 27 gone. Nina didn't have insomnia. She slept like the dead. He'd watched her those first months, studying her rhythms the way he studied everyone in his orbit. She'd never taken a single pill to bed. So where had 27 sleeping pills gone? His mind calculated scenarios, each one darker than the last. A child Adriano's size would need maybe 2 crushed into juice to knock him unconscious. 27 pills meant. The scent hit him then, cutting through his spiraling thoughts. Something sweet and chemical. Not Nina's signature Chanel. Not the vanilla candles Denise kept in the kitchen. This was cheaper, artificial. Burnt sugar and desperation. He knew that smell. Had smelled it before in apartments where junkies cooked their fixes, where people did things they'd regret when the high wore off. Except Nina didn't use. Another carefully maintained fiction in her perfect facade. The smell was coming from upstairs. From the direction of Adriano's room. Dante moved toward the staircase, each step deliberate, the prescription bottle clutched in his fist like evidence at a crime scene. Because that's what this was. Not a home. Not anymore. A crime scene where his son was the intended victim. The sound led him to the kitchen. Not screaming. Worse. The low, venomous hiss of a woman whose mask had shattered completely. Dante rounded the corner, and the scene burned itself into his memory with the clarity of a photograph he'd never be able to unsee. Nina stood near the marble island, and she was magnificent in her fury. Hair still perfect despite the chaos. Silk pajamas clinging to her curves like expensive armor. She could have been posing for a magazine spread except for her eyes. Cold. Calculating. Murderous. This wasn't the polished socialite who smiled at charity galas. This was something feral wearing her skin. Between Nina and the far counter, Denise had positioned herself like a human shield. Her blue uniform was rumpled, sweat-stained. Exhaustion carved lines around her eyes that hadn't been there this morning. But her spine was straight, her stance wide and protective, and her right hand gripped a cast-iron skillet like a weapon she absolutely knew how to use. Behind her, pressed against the cabinets with his small body trembling, was Adriano, Dante's son, 7 years old, still in his red pajamas. His face was sheet-white, tear-streaked, and his fingers clutched the back of Denise's uniform with a desperate grip of a child who'd just learned the world wasn't safe. But he wasn't looking at his father. Wasn't crying for Dante to save him. He was clinging to the maid. That detail struck harder than any bullet. His son trusted Denise more than his own blood. Trusted her enough to hide behind her while his father's fiancée stood 3 feet away radiating violence. The kitchen counter told the rest of the story. A glass of juice tipped over, its contents spreading across granite. A pill crusher, the kind used for elderly patients, sitting in plain sight. White powder residue dusting the marble. And there, clutched in Nina's perfectly manicured hand, a syringe filled with amber liquid that caught the overhead lights like liquid gold. Nina hadn't noticed him yet. Too focused on Denise. Too consumed by whatever plan was unraveling in real time. "You're just the help," Nina spat, her cultured accent fraying at the edges. "You think he'll believe you over me? You think anyone will?" Denise's voice came steady, fierce, utterly unafraid. "He doesn't have to believe me. The evidence speaks for itself." "What evidence?" "You mean the sleeping pills I need? The juice the boy spilled himself?" Nina laughed, sharp and brittle. "Your word against mine, and we both know whose word carries weight in this house." "Mine does." Both women froze, turned, saw him standing in the doorway. Nina's face cycled through shock, fear, then settled on desperate calculation. Dante's gaze never left his son's terrified eyes. Nina's transformation was instantaneous. The vicious predator vanished, replaced by the trembling victim she'd perfected over months of performance. Tears welled in her eyes. Her voice broke beautifully. "Dante, thank God you're home. She's lost her mind. I came down for water and found her drugging Adriano's juice. And when I tried to stop her, she attacked me with, 'Stop!' One word. Quiet as a blade through silk." Nina's mouth closed. Her eyes flickered with something dangerous before the tears resumed. "Darling, please, you have to listen. She's been acting strange for weeks. I think she's having some kind of breakdown. I was just trying to protect." "The syringe in your hand. What's in it?" She glanced down as if surprised to find it there. It's insulin. For my blood sugar. I've been managing it privately because I didn't want to worry you with. You don't have diabetes. Pre-diabetic. My doctor said. Show me the prescription." The hesitation lasted only a heartbeat, but Dante caught it. Saw the calculation running behind her eyes. She shifted tactics, her voice hardening. "I don't have to prove anything to you. Not when your employee is clearly unstable. Look at her. She's threatening me with a weapon." Dante's gaze moved to Adriano. His son hadn't moved. Hadn't run to him. Was still pressed against Denise's back like she was the only safe harbor in a storm. "Adriano." His voice gentled in a way it rarely did. "Come here, Figlio." The boy flinched. Looked up at Denise instead of his father. That's when Dante knew. When certainty settled like ice in his chest. "He can't," Denise said quietly. Her eyes met Dante's, exhausted but fierce. "She's been putting crushed zolpidem in his juice for 3 weeks. Every night. Enough to knock him unconscious by 8. She told me it was melatonin approved by his pediatrician. I believed her until tonight. That's insane. Why would I? Because he's the heir." Denise's voice cut through Nina's protest like steel. "Because your accountant made a mistake last month and copied me on financial documents meant for you. 'Cause I saw the forgery. The amended trust that would make Nina primary guardian and executor if anything happened to Adriano before he turned 18. Nina's face went blank. Not shocked. Not innocent. Dante looked at the syringe. The crushed pills. At his son's terrified eyes. At Denise, who'd risked everything to make one desperate phone call. "Adriano," he said again softer. "Is this true?" His son nodded. Once. Silent testimony more damning than any confession. Dante's hand moved to his spine. Found the Beretta. "Nina." Put down the syringe. The transformation happened between heartbeats. One moment Dante was a father processing betrayal. The next he was something else entirely. Something colder. The man who'd built an empire on calculated violence and unbreakable rules. His voice dropped to the register that made senators sweat and rivals reconsider their life choices. Put on the syringe. Nina's mask finally shattered completely. No more tears. No more trembling victim. Her face hardened into something ugly and desperate. "You don't understand. I've invested 2 years into this family. 2 years of playing house with your brat, pretending to care about your pathetic domesticity. I earned my place here. By trying to murder my son. By securing my future." Her voice rose, shrill and unhinged. "He's 7 years old and worth $40 million. Do you know what I could have done with that kind of money once he had his little accident? Once you were too grief-stricken to think clearly and needed someone to lean on." Dante's finger touched the trigger. Not pulling. Just resting there, feeling the cold metal, calculating trajectory and cleanup. Adriano was 3 feet behind her. Ricochet risk minimal but present. Denise would shield him. The shot would be clean. He could do it. Should do it. Had done it for less. But not in front of his son. "Marco." He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. His consigliere materialized in the doorway within seconds, flanked by 2 soldiers who'd been stationed outside. All three men looked at Nina with the flat, dead-eyed assessment of professionals evaluating a problem that needed erasing. Marco's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "Boss! Take her!" Nina lurched backward, the syringe still clutched in her hand like a talisman that had lost its power. "You can't. I'll go to the police. I'll tell them everything. Your business, your associates, the shipments. You'll tell them nothing." Dante's voice carried the finality of a judge's gavel. "Because you're not going to the police. You're going to the family. And the family handles its own justice." Understanding dawned in Nina's eyes. True fear finally. Not the performed kind. The kind that came from knowing exactly what family justice meant for someone who'd threatened a boss's son. She tried to run. Made it 2 steps before Marco's hand clamped on her shoulder like a vice. "Don't hurt her," Dante said quietly. Marco paused. "Not here. Not in front of the boy. Take her to the warehouse. Make it clean. Make it disappear." Nina screamed. Started fighting. Marco's expression never changed as he lifted her like she weighed nothing. His men moved with grim satisfaction, their hands efficient and brutal. The kitchen fell silent after Marco's team dragged Nina through the service entrance. The only sounds were Adriano's quiet sobbing and the drip of spilled juice hitting the floor in rhythmic drops. Dante holstered the Beretta, turned to his son. Adriano was still pressed against Denise, his small fingers white-knuckled in the fabric of her uniform. When Dante took a step forward, the boy flinched. That flinch cut deeper than any blade. "It's okay, baby," Denise murmured, her voice hoarse but steady. "Your papa's here now. You're safe." Adriano looked up at her, searching her face for confirmation. Only when she nodded did he slowly release his grip. He didn't run to Dante. Just stood there, trembling and small and utterly destroyed. Dante wanted to reach for him. Wanted to pull his son close and promise nothing would ever hurt him again. But he could see the truth in Adriano's eyes. The boy didn't trust those promises anymore. Didn't trust him. "Go with your papa," Denise said softly, giving Adriano a gentle push. "I'll be right here. I'm not going anywhere." Only then did Adriano move. Walked slowly into Dante's arms like a stranger accepting comfort from another stranger. His body was rigid, braced for disappointment. Dante held him anyway. Felt the wild hammering of his son's heart against his chest. Breathed in the scent of his hair and felt something crack open in his chest that had nothing to do with business or empire or power. "Take him upstairs," he told Denise. His voice came out rougher than intended. "Stay with him tonight." "Yes, Mr. Rossi." "And Denise." She paused, Adriano's hand already in hers. "Don't go far. We need to talk." 20 minutes later she returned. Adriano was asleep. Real sleep this time, not drug-induced unconsciousness. Denise lowered herself into the chair across from Dante at the kitchen table. Her hands trembled as she folded them in her lap, but her spine stayed straight. She looked exhausted. Looked like she'd aged 5 years in one night. Dante poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Slid one across to her. She didn't touch it. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" The question came out harsher than he intended. "Why did you let her stay?" Denise's jaw tightened. "Because I'm the help, Mr. Rossi. 'Cause I've worked for you for 15 years and I know my place. Because the one time I questioned her, 3 weeks ago, when I noticed Adriano sleeping too deeply, she reminded me exactly how replaceable I am. She threatened you. She said you'd choose her over me." Denise's voice cracked. "And she was right. You would have." Denise finally reached for the whiskey. Drained it in one swallow like she needed the burn to continue. When she set the glass down, her hands had stopped trembling. "It wasn't just today, Mr. Rossi. It's been months. Maybe longer." Her eyes met his, and he saw something there he'd never noticed before. Not just loyalty. Grief. Nina stopped pretending to care about Adriano the moment the engagement ring went on her finger. Before that she was patient with him. Played the perfect stepmother. After. He became an inconvenience. Dante's jaw clenched. He'd been there. He'd watched their interactions at dinner, seen Nina smile at his son, heard her laugh at Adriano's childish jokes. He'd seen what he wanted to see. She started small, Denise continued, her voice steady now, clinical. Forgot to pick him up from school. Covered said there was traffic. She'd skip his bedtime routine, leave him waiting for her to read his story until he fell asleep alone. I started reading to him instead. Told you she'd already done it when you asked. Each word was a knife. Each revelation another layer of his blindness exposed. She stopped coming to his soccer games. You were busy so you didn't notice. I went instead, cheered for him, took pictures. He asked me not to tell you because he didn't want you to be disappointed in her. Denise's voice cracked. A 7-year-old protecting your feelings about the woman who was slowly erasing him. Dante's hands curled into fists on the table. Why didn't you tell you? Her laugh was bitter. I tried. 3 months ago. Remember when I asked if you had a moment to discuss Adriano's behavior? You said you were late for a meeting and we'd talk later. We never did. I tried again. You told me Nina was handling it, that she knew what she was doing, that I should focus on my actual job. The memory surfaced. He'd been irritated by the interruption. Had dismissed her concern without even hearing it. So I stopped trying to tell you and started just protecting him. Denise's eyes glistened but no tears fell. I made sure he ate when she forgot dinner. I held him when he cried because she told him he was too clingy. I taught him to come to my quarters when he had nightmares because she'd started locking her bedroom door. I became what she refused to be. His mother, Dante said quietly. No, I could never replace his mother. But I could be someone safe. Someone who saw him. She straightened. 2 weeks ago, he told me he wished I was his family instead of Nina. He said I was the only person who loved him besides you. Except you were never here, and she made sure he knew it. The accusation hung between them. True and devastating. Last week, I found the amended trust documents. Saw her plan in black and white. I realized she wasn't just neglecting him. She was erasing him slowly so that when he finally disappeared, no one would be surprised. The quiet boy who was always sleeping, always tired, always sick. When the accident happened, people would say he was fragile, delicate, that it was tragic but inevitable. Denise leaned forward. I didn't just save his life tonight, Mr. Rossi. I've been saving his spirit for months. Fighting to keep him whole while you built your empire and she plotted his murder. The silence stretched between them. Heavy with 15 years of invisible labor and months of quiet heroism, he'd been too arrogant to see. Dante looked at this woman, this person he'd reduced to a uniform and a function, and saw clearly for the first time. She'd saved his son. Not once. Not tonight. Every single day for months while he'd been building an empire that meant nothing if Adriano wasn't alive to inherit it. He reached for his phone. Denise tensed, probably expecting dismissal despite everything. Expecting him to thank her and send her back to her place. Instead he dialed Marco. Boss! His consigliere answered on the first ring. His voice carrying the wet sounds of work being completed. When you're finished, I need documentation drawn up. Adoption papers. Whatever legal framework makes Denise Daniels a permanent guardian of Adriano with full parental rights. Separate trust in her name, 10 million initial, another 20 on my death. She gets the East Wing, fully furnished. Vehicle, driver, security detail. Silence on the other end. Then, boss, I'm not sure I heard that correctly. You heard it perfectly. Dante's eyes never left Denise's shocked face. She's not staff anymore, Marco. She's family. Anyone who doesn't understand that can find employment elsewhere. Get it done by morning. He ended the call. Denise stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Mr. Rossi, I can't possibly. Dante. He stood, moved around the table, and did something he'd never done in 15 years. He pulled out the chair beside her and sat as an equal, not an employer towering above. My name is Dante. And you will. I don't want your money. I don't need. This isn't about what you need. It's about what you've earned. His voice roughened. You saved my son's life. You saved his soul. You were the only person in this house who saw him as more than a chess piece or an inheritance. You loved him when I was too blind to see he needed protecting. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. I just did what was right. No. Dante reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. The hand that had wielded a skillet as a weapon. The hand that had held his son through nightmares while his father built empires. You did what I should have done. You were the parent he needed when I failed him. He squeezed gently. The Rossi legacy isn't money or power, Denise. It's Adriano. And you're the only reason there's still a legacy to protect. So yes, you're family now. 'Cause you always were. I was just too stupid to see it. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.